One last ride for the Sun Devils, and they'll be traveling to Corvallis for it. Zach Keenan here, alongside publisher Hode Rubino for DevilsDigest.com, previewing the conclusion of the regular season and what could be the final game of the year for the Arizona State Sun Devils. And Hode, what a weird one it's going to be, to quite honest, because as physical of a game as football may be, there's a significant mental component. And in a game where coaches, players, and fans all expected ASU to come back to Tempe for their second home game of the season and their last game and senior night and everything else. And now they're headed to Corvallis, Oregon in the middle of December. Hode, how do players and coaches block that out when it's time for game time? I know you usually wait for keys until the end of our preview, but how do they block that out?
Yeah, you're right, Zach. This is definitely going to be a key. And like you said, sometimes we forget how mentally exhausting the game of football can be, besides being so physically demanding, if not punishing at times. And a football coach once told me that when he measures the resiliency of fans, coaches, players, that's how really the scale does tilt. That players are the most resilient, fans are the least resilient, and coaches are somewhere in between. So if that's the case, this Saturday night in Corvallis, maybe Arizona State really is in good shape in terms of really just blocking everything out. I just don't think really this has been a team that's been crying, woe is me. And they definitely had a quote-unquote opportunity to do that after the USC loss, having a 3-week, really what amounted to be almost a month layoff when they play against UCLA. I think it's a game that they definitely should have won, and I didn't see a team that was just like going out there through the motions or anything like that. And then after the loss to UCLA, and we talked about it last week, it seemed like there were so many fans that were absolutely down on this team and thinking that they checked out and questioning everything about the program. And not only did they go to Tucson and win the Territorial Cup matchup, they do it with style points. So I think that the mental makeup of this team is probably much stronger than a lot of people think it is. And you're right. I mean, it's definitely disappointing that players like Chase Lucas, for example, is not going to have senior night. Evan Fields, another player that comes to mind, and they really deserve to have that. But I just think that these players have been really through hell and back. And I didn't see in the two losses a team that absolutely lost interest, was getting blown out of the water, or anything of that sort. And I think that maybe the mental makeup of this team is much stronger than we think it is. So maybe it's still hard for some fans to come to grasp with the fact that ASU is going to end up playing 3 games on the road, only 1 game at home, and that 1 game on the road, pretty nasty weather conditions are awaiting them probably over there in Corvallis. But I think that the players and coaches are probably going to snap out of it much quicker than all of us think they will. And look, even though Oregon State has been very lucky to play all 6 games scheduled, ASU obviously not so lucky playing half of those games. At the same time, I think that right now, even though it's only 1 win, really the only win of the season for ASU, I think the trajectory of this program compared to Oregon State right now, riding a 2-game losing streak, is something that probably should show itself even under somewhat adverse conditions, even under the premise that ASU probably should be in the stadium right behind us here on Saturday night.
Let's begin our preview with a look at the Oregon State offense, and redshirt running back Jermar Jefferson is the first name that comes to mind, and maybe the only, because he's such a fresh name in Sun Devil fans' minds. The past 3 years, win or loss, he has ran up and down over the Arizona State defense year after year, and he's actually listed as questionable for this week. And the two of us, we are not in the business of predicting injuries, but something we are in the business of is seeing how ASU will respond to that. So what does ASU's defense need to set up like to prevent a big run game from happening for Oregon State?
Well, Jermar Jefferson isn't only one of the best running backs, bar none, in the Pac-12. Somebody who, if he did decide to declare for the NFL draft, should definitely get selected higher than lower, I would think. He accounts to nearly 75% of their rushing attack. He averages over 150 yards, and the Beavers as a team on the ground average just under 190 yards. So for him not to play, I mean, that is beyond a major blow for the Oregon State offense. Not only the rushing attack, but even if he does play, I mean, suffice to say that he's not going to be 100%. But I think for Arizona State approaching this game, they really shouldn't care much if he is or is not playing, because I think they would gladly take their chances with this Oregon State offense in the air. Again, we talk about weather conditions are probably not going to be conducive as it is to have a potent passing game, or maybe even any passing game at all. So with an Oregon State passing attack that really hasn't really proven itself that much. I mean, with all the issues that ASU has had in these last 3 games, I don't think Oregon State can really boast that aspect of an offense to be head and shoulders better than ASU. So I think that the Sun Devils are definitely going to take their chances by crowding the line of scrimmage and seeing if that Oregon State passing attack, again, in weather conditions that may not be all that conducive, really can beat them. But it also comes down to the strongest unit on this ASU defense, as crazy as it may sound, especially when you look at the preseason outlook that we had on this defense. We talked about this defensive line not only possibly being the weakest link on the defense, but maybe the weakest link on the entire team. That's another boy was I wrong moment, because that front four definitely silenced a lot of critics in the preseason that really thought that this defensive line is going to play catch up, that it's going to be the Achilles heel of what was a great back seven. And sure enough, this defensive line has absolutely been playing lights out, even in losses. We talked about it. I think has really did a great job harassing the opponent's backfield, sacks, and tackles for loss. And even though maybe somewhat mixed results in the rushing attack, you can't really point to that USC and UCLA losses and say the defensive line was definitely the crux of all the deficiencies the Sun Devils showed on that side of the ball during that contest. So I think this defensive line right now is playing really well, and it definitely should show against an Oregon State rushing attack. With even the Jefferson, I think they definitely have the capability of slowing down their rushing attack. If Jefferson doesn't play, Oregon State, and I know we're overstating the obvious over here, is in deep trouble, because again, when you have only one running back accounting for nearly 75% of your yards on the ground, not having him in a lineup, that's going to be a really crushing blow, I would think, for the Beavers.
Let's switch to the other side of the ball, and for any ASU fans expecting a repeat of last week's 9-touchdown, 70-point performance, it might be time to lower your expectations a little bit, but to be completely blunt with you and straightforward with our subscribers, this isn't the best defense in the Pac-12 over at Oregon State. Realistically speaking, how much lower do fans' expectations need to be below that 9-touchdown performance from Tucson?
Well, Zach, I did say before the U of A game that I didn't think any of the offenses was going to light up the scoreboard. Boy, was I wrong. But I don't know if I'm really jinxing it again, saying it right now, that I don't know if this ASU offense can really light up the scoreboard, just because Oregon State defense, as many problems as they may have, Zach, I don't know if they're really that bad like U of A was. And again, we talk about the quote-unquote checking out. U of A checked out definitely in the first half, maybe even in the first quarter. I don't see Oregon State really following that path to a T like the Wildcats did in Tucson last Friday. But I think the same formula that should work for the ASU defense that worked well against the Wildcats last week, I think the same can be said about the Sun Devil offense and what they should try to do against this Beavers defense. Now, would I like to see the passing game to have more than 13 passing attempts in the game? Sure, yeah. I mean, I think it was nice that the ASU offense did score, like you said, 9 touchdowns, but it may be a little nicer if they did a little style points. Maybe Jaden Daniels having double the 11 pass attempts that he had, maybe surpassing the 300-yard passing mark, which really might be the first time and the only time he would do it in 2020, based on how the schedule is possibly shaping up. So I definitely think that this ASU offense, who's facing a Beaver defense that is giving up just around 190 yards on the ground on average, can definitely impose its will, just like they did against the Wildcats. But really, you're also talking about a passing defense of Oregon State that is giving up just under 240 yards on average. So I'd like to think that this passing game, which we definitely saw some encouraging signs in Tucson, I don't want to discount it altogether. I'd like him to see that next step up. And again, if this is indeed the last game for ASU, not only to win, but really to win with a passing game that gives you some confidence going into spring practice next year, going into the 2021 season, because I think the rushing attack really showing us everything that we thought it was going to be. That is one aspect that really has nothing to prove. But in terms of the passing game for ASU, yes, I think they definitely have a lot to prove, and maybe not as much as they did after game 1 compared to after game 3, but this is definitely an opportunity, I think, for this aerial attack by Jaden Daniels and the wide receivers to really have possibly their best game of the year.
The final lap in a roller coaster season that has been 2020 will take place in Corvallis, Oregon. And Hode, I know your predictions have been here or there, but we won't discuss that. Do you think that ASU has an opportunity here to end the season on a high note and finish at 500 and really salvage a season that just looked so grim to start out with?
Yeah, absolutely. As much as we talk about, again, the less than ideal conditions of playing another game on the road, less than ideal conditions of playing a Saturday night, 8:30 Arizona time kickoff in what should be maybe not a terribly windy day, but 50 degrees as the high temperature at kickoff, probably maybe getting into the 30s by the time the game ends. Obviously, a big chance for rain, whether it's a drizzle or just or downpour. I mean, I've been to Corvallis in both, so and then none of them are pleasant. But yeah, I definitely think that this is a team that definitely should be playing with a lot of confidence on both sides of the ball after what happened over what happened in Tucson. And even though they're facing, I think, a better team on both sides of the ball in Oregon State, it's definitely a game that I think ASU, to some extent, should impose their will. Maybe not in such a dominating fashion as they did against the Wildcats last Friday, but maybe somewhat also to win comfortably. And I know that all this cliche in football is run the ball, stop the run. And I think when you look at the performance of these two teams, again, I know one sample size is twice as the other, but when you look at the strengths of these two squads, ASU, I think, is much more capable of achieving those objectives, which really are the bread and butter, I think, for any game plan compared to what Oregon State can achieve. And again, I'm not really changing my prediction or changing my outlook if Jamar Jefferson does or does not play. I mean, if he doesn't play, I think life for the Sun Devils is going to be much easier. But even if he does play, this ASU team has proven that they can beat him in the lineup. So I think that ASU is going to score less than half the points they did at Tucson, which, you know, is that a bad sign or a good sign? I guess it depends how greedy you are in that department. But I see Arizona State winning what could be their last game of the 2020 season, 31-22 in Corvallis.
Corvallis, Oregon may not be the ideal holiday destination in the middle of December, but it's the one that Sun Devils have. So for all of your pre, during, and post-game content, make sure you keep it locked in to DevilsDigest.com and give us a follow on Twitter at Devils Digest. For Hode Rubino, I'm Zach Keenan, reminding you that your couch is probably a whole lot warmer than it'll be for these players up in Corvallis. Enjoy the game, and we'll see you next time.